would recommend that you find a way that makes the pain infinitesimally small and the effort even smaller, because most of us are lazy, and I suspect your 7 developers are equally lazy, and lazy is a good thing in many ways. That's my excuse. So if you give them a challenge that says you're going to have to spend the next 30 hours reading the standards and then apply the standards, they ain't going to do that. They're going to think, where's the pool table? Or I'm going to the bar instead. And no matter what their nice thinkings are, it's unlikely they'll actually work on this. So finding something that's really trivial to do first would be useful. So perhaps I would use something like the WebAIM, AIM, so WBAIM, and it's a browser plugin available for Firefox and possibly other browsers now. And I think it comes from Australia. And it's a very mature tool that allows you to experiment with your web pages and do simple things like remove CSS, remove images, and then look at the content. So you can do this today. It takes, if you use Firefox, it takes you about a minute to find the add-on, install the add-on, and restart Firefox with your 423 open windows. Or 7 if you're well structured, unlike me. So that you can then go and visit your web pages and just take away CSS and see what happens. You can put the page into linear view, which means that it linearizes it in a similar way to the way a screen reader would try and interpret the web content. And try those sort of things first. Cost financially, 0. Cost time, an hour. That's including everything and doing the first couple of tests and talking to someone about it. And then find ways to try and integrate with the automated testing, if you have automated tests. So if you're using something like unit tests or Selenium-based tests, then extend on those. If you haven't got automated browser tests, then the challenge is how do I first do that and then add the accessibility tests. The open source project that I have written uses WebDriver, which is part of the Selenium project. So if you've already got that, adding my stuff is a couple of lines of code. If you haven't got that, perhaps you have to learn how to install Java, set up your continuous build, set up the things that build your server automatically. By the time you've done all this stuff, 3 months have passed unless you're really motivated. So find the simple things to do now. Do some human testing, so interactive testing, and then find ways to automate that work as quickly as practical. It's actually deceptively easy. Go to W3C, and the Web Accessibility Initiatives is actually quite clear guidelines. It talks about the different types of issues that we're trying to address in terms of accessibility. So I forget the exact terms, but things like, is it discernible? Can I recognize it? So I actually had some questions I didn't ask this morning, but what color is my top? Now, most of you can discern the colors of my top and tell me. If you're colorblind, well, I happen to be wearing dark blue and grey, so you'd probably still be able to tell me it's dark blue and grey because I'm not wearing red, green, or any of the other colours that cause problems. But Gary, good luck, in him telling you what colours it is. Does it matter to Gary what colour I'm wearing? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's discernible. So that's one of the facets of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and the Web Accessibility Initiatives, is saying, can someone discern an element? Can I then interact with it? So I would recommend that you do read that. And if you read the whole lot of it, it would probably take you half a day. But read one page and start, and that's about 10 minutes of your time. And I think it's got some pretty good introductions, some general overviews. Also read the first 5 or 6 pages of BS 8878, this relatively new British standard, if only to learn about the concept of enjoyable, and help people. When you think about users being able to enjoy using your site, even when they have impairments, the rest of it is detail. How do I make sure that this person does it? Well, I can probably do 3 or 4 things that's likely to improve things. And then we can iterate. We can improve and make it better. But we haven't got many excuses once we understand the purpose.
Well, I think what you're sort of saying is you're looking for kind of a custom experience depending on certain factors, correct? So that's a sort of facet of what does the user want and what's the device capable of. So taking I guess, well, to my mind, a relatively simple but perhaps an important example, if you have a lot of text that's harder to read, then having the facility to get that in audio form Yeah, and that could be then achieved technically in two ways. You could either rely on some sort of automated sort of computer reading the text to you, or you could actually record it, have a human being record the text. Taken a step further, you could use a video with audio as well, instead of text, or as well as text. Yeah, and actually on a small screen device that could be a lot more effective for getting your message across than a large amount of text, but that requires investment and thought. So with our content management systems, do we really have the time or inclination to go and put information into all those different forms? But actually the benefit of doing that for certain key information could be huge for the scenarios that you're describing and for accessibility purposes as well.
Well, one of the things to look at is the screen reader world. So in Windows, JAWS is the prevalent product. On Mac, it's built into the operating system now. And look at NVDA, which is an open source project. Look at the commercial ones. And one of the things they have to do is they have to be able to interpret virtually any web content, no matter how scrappily written by whatever person, company, organization provides the web content. And they have to be able to interpret it in a form that a human can digest. So, Gary, I think you use a screen reader from time to time, don't you?
Yeah.
You probably use JAWS, don't you?
JAWS.
Yeah, so he uses JAWS, and by all means you can test with JAWS, but JAWS has to sort of second guess what the web content is. And it has to integrate with the web browser, and even if they only picked Internet Explorer, they're already dealing with multiple versions of Internet Explorer, but because you as a user have choice, you could be using Opera or Chrome or Firefox or goodness knows whatever browser. They have to find ways to integrate with that. So there's lots of different levels of indirection between the systems. Furthermore, ARIA, Accessible Rich Internet Applications, or RIAs, Rich Internet Applications, and Accessible Rich Internet Applications, ARIA, is supposedly a standard to enable us to provide information with our web content to say, this is a text box, this is a scroller, this is a whatever it is, a slider. And the screen reader is supposed to be able to interpret this and be able to give meaningful additional context to the user, saying this is a scroll and it goes between 0 and 100, the current value is 53. To move up, press the plus arrow, whatever it is. However, it turns out that there are so many poor implementations of ARIA on web sites that the screen reader companies have now learnt, in some cases, to simply disregard it entirely. So what was intended to help in terms of accessibility, because it's been so poorly implemented by so many people, actually turns out to be a disservice, not a service to the community. So it's worth looking at the aspects of ARIA and screen readers if you're going to be testing this stuff. I think you would probably be liable if you look at the CNN case that was mentioned today. But let's look at VAT. If you've never met HMCE before, it's a good thing. So they don't care what excuse the director uses. It's something to do with plausible deniability. Can you say, well, I didn't realize I was breaking the law. I didn't realize I had to file my company accounts. Guess what? They might be reasonably nice to you the first time. The second time, they're going to get a little bit impatient with you. Third time, then you're probably not going to have many excuses left. So what I would suggest you do is, yes, of course, make your systems accessible, but why not provide some little helper tools that check the content? And you don't have to do this in real time while it's being displayed, but perhaps when it's being entered. So when someone's typing in content or connecting it up or sucking it in from other systems, RSS feeds, whatever, check it then. And if you spot something you think will damage the accessibility or disable it or whatever, put a little warning saying, we notice the content you're trying to put in seems to have a problem that may affect the accessibility. Here's the problem we perceive you have. Would you like to fix it? And then you fix the problem at source rather than when you're displaying it.
Well, I think HTML5 presents a world of possibilities, and some of those possibilities are going to present a problem from an accessibility point of view. So if you have Canvas, for example, is the ability to kind of draw objects on the screen from sort of programming, and you can have a very rich interactive experience, and you see swipes and movements and double clicks and double touches and spinning things and stuff like that. So it presents this opportunity for a really rich user experience, but only for people who are fully able-bodied, and that is a problem, I think, when it comes to accessibility, where a website wants to maximise all those whiz-bang features. That's certainly a consideration. I think the other thing is technical. HTML5 hasn't been implemented as a standard consistently across all the browsers yet. We come across all sorts of little issues that you think are really trivial that mean that browsers behave differently, and they behave differently across different versions of the same browser. So there's some challenges there as well. But I think that the key thing will be the rich user interfaces and this drive towards these sort of sexy look and feel, which is done at the expense of all the good stuff that we've just talked about.